Guys, watch out for VoxPopMe. They're capital efficient, raising just call it 15, 16 million bucks to grow revenues to 10 million. So they've been efficient, obviously working with a lot of different groups of providers. We're excited to have funded them with 750,000 bucks at Founderpath on a 24-month term. But more importantly, we were able to work with the chairman of the board and Lonnie and the Go Forward CEO Andy to reset some of the equity chunks of the business to incentivize the Go Forward team. Andy, back in day one in 2012, owned only 2% of the company. We wanted to get him up to where he needs to be now as the Go Forward CEO, and we weren't able to do that without him and Lonnie's support on the board. The full story was a good one. Enjoy the episode. So we're thrilled, obviously, with Andy and Lonnie today. They're running a company called VoxPopMe, and we first started speaking in terms of Founderpath and VoxPopMe. Guys, this is crazy. It's all the way back in February, actually. February 7th was my first email in my email inbox. But why don't you introduce yourselves really quick? Lonnie, what's your role at VoxPopMe? Andy, what's your role?
Yeah, I'm chairman of the board. I've been on the board now, I think around 4 years, 5 years. So yeah. So that's my role, is to do what Andy tells me to do.
And Andy?
Something like that. My role's now CEO. I was founder and originally CTO at VoxPopMe, and then moved into the CEO role about 7 months ago. So it started off in end of 2011 is when we kind of originally founded the company. So been with it ever since.
And take us through a bit of the sort of company story after you give a teaser on what the product does, because you're in a very exciting space. Andy, how would you describe the product?
Yeah, so we work with kind of large businesses, Fortune 500, helping them really understand their consumers a lot better through video. So companies doing research, either one-to-one interviews, focus groups, similar kind of setting to what we're in now, or launching video surveys and connecting with their consumers to understand their thoughts towards trends, spending habits, maybe new product ideation, right throughout the kind of research flow, and really helping them to analyze that at scale and understand their research centrally as well across the company, and drive kind of customer empathy and change within the business. Mm-hmm. So it's been super exciting journey from the start, and initially kicked off with the idea of, we all had our phones in our pockets and everyone was getting more comfortable recording video, and how could we connect brands to people, and built an app and launched it that way as the kind of first kickoff point, and grew from there, understanding the kind of research space more and more from a couple of, technical founders who didn't come from market research originally. So we've learned a lot along the way.
I want to go back and learn about day one and your co-founders and the original team, and then Lonnie getting involved, etc. Before we do that, though, Andy, I don't want to bury the lead here. Are you guys comfortable sharing what revenue is today, or revenue range? How have you guys scaled?
Yeah, so total revenue-wise, we're kind of sitting at around the 10 million mark. We're primarily ARR revenue from that. It's kind of about an 80-20 split. It's kind of, I think looking at a few interesting opportunities moving into this following year as well. So closing out this year, and we can kind of get onto that story a little bit in a while as to how we kind of progressed our relationship. But looking forward to a good year of expansion into a new territory moving forward next year as well.
So take us back to day one. When did you guys write the first line of code for the company? And Andy, how did you decide to split equity with your co-founders?
It was an interesting start to the company. So I was actually working with the guy who founded the company with, Dave Carruthers, and I was working as a technical director at his company to begin with, and then we started.
What year was this, by the way?
Sorry, this was 2012. About 2011, 2012, joined him, and that company was helping to bring in seed investment for, we'd have people coming with ideas. They wouldn't have the technical background. They'd be looking to fund. And so we were kind of incubating product startups from that point. We'd had some that ended up being pretty successful out the back of it, others that were, it was very hit and miss. And so when we came up for the idea around video, it was, thinking about how we could connect with brands through that, we decided to kind of split off our own way, and kind of took some of the learnings that we'd had from how the companies had been formed through that process. And that's how things worked out there. So equity split was actually quite interesting, because we kicked off with, so first lines of code, I was writing in the kind of, when would it have been? The November 2012, I think it was. And And so because we had these angel investors that were already familiar with everything that we were doing, we kind of went straight into that route and actually did some fundraising pretty early. And yeah, that's kind of, and took equity split based on that and a few of the roles that we kind of kicked off the company with at the time.
Are you comfortable sharing, Andy, sort of like percentages there? Dave was about X percent, you were about Y percent, investors were about Z percent.
Yeah, I mean, it was so at the time it was interesting because we'd actually formed it with a number of people that we decided to kind of kick off from who were originally in the previous company, and so at the time, like as a percentage, mine was pretty low. I think it was around like 2-3%. Which was so there was a few of us that took that amount, and actually a lot of people dropped off within probably within the first year. And so I was kind of always super passionate about everything that we were doing, and have stuck at it for the long haul because I've been excited about the technology that we've been building and the opportunity space that we've been in as well. So kind of probably at a bit of a lower end from what you typically see within maybe some typical product SaaS startups as well from an equity standpoint.
Well, 2-3% in 2012. Now, 12 years later, you're the go forward CEO. You're the leader of the company. We'll talk about equity later on. But Lonnie, let's introduce you to the story. When you came in and you said, let me look at the product, let me look at the team, let me look at the equity split. What were your first thoughts?
Yeah. So at the time, I was president of a company called InMoment, a customer experience platform. And we were growing rapidly and competing against some of the bigger CX platforms out there, like the Qualtrics, the Medallias, and those types. And so we needed something that was going to differentiate us even further. And we started talking about video as an executive team. Our country manager in London called me one day. I was on my way there, and he said, I found the company we need to talk to. And they're good people, they're good humans, and fit our culture.
You wanted to acquire them at the start?
No, we just wanted to. We didn't know. We didn't know if it was an acquisition or if we were going to just integrate, the technology and he just walk you through into the platform. So I went to London, had a meeting there, and then one of the co-founders with Andy flew to Salt Lake. Yeah, we met pretty much all day. Poor guy. We had 30 people in the room and just him pitching, kind of what Andy just walked you through. So then I had a chance to meet Andy and meet the team, and we love the technology. And so we were one of the first back then to integrate video into our CX platform. And through that, we, created a relationship. And just continued to work together for a number of years. And then eventually I stepped.
That meeting in Aspen.
When was that?
Yeah.
Gosh, Andy, can you remember when that was?
17?
Yeah, it was probably something around there. Yeah.
I think so. Late 16, early 17. And it was cutting edge too at that time. It's still cutting edge, but it was cutting edge, and it had great, sex appeal to it. And we were getting all kinds of meetings with the Nikes of the world. And, it was really a lot of fun. And then again, trying to figure out how we were going to integrate that in an elegant way into the platform. And so eventually I stepped out after 11 years at InMoment, and wrote a book and doing some things like that. And then Andy and team came to me, and Dave came to me and said, hey, we'd love to have you on the board. And this was just right before COVID, if I recall. And we had the team over from the UK. And I remember that board meeting specifically because as soon as everybody was getting back on a plane, we said, hey, we might want to talk about this COVID thing. We spent about 10 or 15 minutes talking about that. Of course, we all experienced it together around the world. So I've been on the board, and then I'm chairman of the board now for a number of years. And I just love first and foremost, I love the team. Andy's leadership I've always appreciated. And clearly,
and how many folks today are full time?
We have 70,
around 60-ish now.
60-ish. Yeah. And so we've the last couple of years we've really managed, costs, and have been on a path to profitability. And now, everything's really starting to turn with Andy's leadership, and, actually starting to invest back into the company, which is really exciting. And so, I just had great belief in this company's opportunities and growth, and they work hard, and I always say every day with Andy or the team is a good energy day. They're not downers. They have smiles on their faces, and they move forward. And I think in today's world, as hard as everybody works, that's a big deal.
Hey folks, if we haven't met yet, my name is Nathan Latka. I launched and sold my first software company back in 2015 and went on to write a book about it, which you guys made a Wall Street Journal bestseller, purchasing over 30,000 copies. Thank you so much for that. After the book, I launched this show and went on to create Founderpath.com. I raised a large fund to do non-dilutive deals with B2B software founders. So far, we've invested in over 400 software founders, totaling $150 million. Here in 2024, we're doing 3 to 4 new deals per week. So if you're looking for capital and don't want to give up equity, go sign up at Founderpath.com for free to get your offer. All right, let's jump into the interview.
And Andy's cutting up the code. He's the product guy. He's in there doing the work. And now it's just like, okay, now you're CEO. Now you're talking to customers too, right? You're doing all the customer calls, right? Or hanging out with the customer team. So that's exciting. I don't want to skip over a key part of the story though, Lonnie. So you joined the board in 2019. I want to understand sort of how you guys thought about equity early on and what the board structure looked like. When you joined, was it 2, 3, 5, 7 people? What was the board composition?
We had, what do we see, Andy? What do we have? I think we had 6 time, roughly. And I think, even back then, as Andy referenced, his own equity, there was always a conversation about it within the board and within the group, and wanting, to get more. And just with the makeup, the more money we were taking on, of course, dilution was starting to happen. And
how much had you guys raised,
Andy, at that time?
So at that time we were probably, so we went through, I guess we were probably somewhere between the 15 and 20 mark at that point.
Yep. The Series A in 2019 was with Origin Ventures, I think, for about 9 million, right? Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So we originally raised some funds through Mercia, and then Mercia followed on with Origins at that round, and then a stage later as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Mercy and Origin have been fantastic partners based on everything you guys have told me. I've had the chance to chat with, I think, 1 or 2 of them and was really impressed. But I guess, Lonnie, when you joined the board and there was sort of all this floating idea on the board agenda of like, hey, what should the equity split look like for the go-forward management? Why wasn't sort of anything like, we obviously pushed that once Founderpath came in, but why do you think that didn't happen ahead of time or before that?
I think that at that time, just with the investments that were coming in, there was a lot of protection of those investments. And there was some equity that was being, rolled out, but not to the point or level that you guys had recommended in an effort to raise, the capital with you. And so there definitely was a push from the leadership team. I think we just had some level of protection from the board at that time and saying, hey, let's take everything we've done here and invest it, and let's move forward and let's really get this thing growing. And so I think there was just a delay. I don't believe it was ever, we don't want to give more. It's just, now that we're on the playing field, you've got the equity, let's see how you play. I think that was pretty much the deal during that time.
Yeah. And I think it's always tough as well, because you're going through those stages of trying to raise. And at the time, I think we were concentrating so much on what we wanted to do with that within the business. We weren't necessarily like thinking about it from our perspective at that early stage when we were going out to do that raise. And that's something that, chatting to a lot of the other founders and things, having that intention to go in. So you've had those expectations set up front. And so I think we were often coming out the back of those conversations and then trying to negotiate for things. And it becomes more difficult to do at that stage because you've gone through all the excitement of everything, come out the other side. So, things just kind of, nudged on at that time. And it wasn't through, anyone trying to, do anything untoward or bad towards us. It was just the makeup of like how we went into that. I think that's something that I've definitely learned, through that time. And I've heard from other founders who have gone through the same kind of struggles and had to be more purposeful in that at later stages.
And Nathan, I think to the question too, later on, I'd say in the last 3 years, I remember one of the meetings I had specifically with one of our investors, and the tone was now changing into, what do we need? Who do you need? Who do we need to make sure is still flying the plane? So we had those conversations. Obviously, Andy was at the top of that list, and we had a couple of other people. And so we, there was an openness to it, and with both of our lead investors, actually, they were saying, okay, we've done a lot of work, and we've made some progress. Clearly on the profitability side, we've made some significant progress, but now how do we take this to the next level? And so you came in, sometime after that. So I think the appetite was open even more, and we were talking about percentages and, what could we do for Andy, and you came in and blew that out of the water in a positive way for us, I think.
Yeah. So picking up at that part of the story from Founderpath's perspective, when we got the original data room from you guys, there was a couple of things. Number one, we loved the business. We know the space pretty well. We know some other M&A activity in the space, and I also know the other products in the space really well. And when I got the product tour and talked to one or two of your customers, I said, whoa, this product is already feature parity with much larger companies in the exact same space. These guys just got to get sales and marketing done, and you're going to see the growth, and you're seeing that now. But one of the things, the biggest risk we saw back in February when we were diligencing the VoxPopMe deal, despite love in the product, was, and I'm going to generalize here because I don't remember the exact numbers, but when I asked Andy and Lonnie, hey, what is the go forward management team? Who's going to take this thing to the next level? And you guys listed, your key names, right? And there were several of them. And I then went back to my team and I looked at the cap table and I sort of looked at how much equity those names had. And again, I don't know what the exact number was, but it was something, I want to say it was like maybe something between like 8 and maybe 15% of sort of this was the group that you guys said was going to change the company and drive off future growth. And they were already diluted down to like 8 to 15-ish%. And it was something on the order of like 4 to 9 people, right? And guys, I want to make sure I'm not misspeaking. There was something like that, right?
I think that's right. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, it was right in that range. And so I saw this as an opportunity. I said, the board doesn't necessarily, maybe the board wants to put in money, maybe they don't, or the investors. I said, but Founderpath can align with management here and use our capital coming as a forcing function to get a board resolution done, to reestablish a new ESOP pool, and then reissue those shares however the board wants to the go forward management to increase their equity. When we proposed that, Lonnie, Andy, what was the internal communication like at the board level and the management level? What were you guys thinking?
What I was thinking, and Andy, I'll let you talk to this too, but what I was thinking was refreshing. How refreshing is that? You're talking to an investor that actually wants to put more equity back in the hands of those that are going to take this to the next level. And how do we do it? And I knew at that time, we have a very, I would say, communicative and cohesive board. It's not, they're here to support. We may not get everything, or the company at that time might not get everything they want, but they're open to it. And so we had created a really nice culture with the board. Prior to that, I think we had a little more of a hostile culture with the board and maybe a typical type old school board, but this one has been very supportive. So I thought it was refreshing. I believe when Andy, and I started chatting, he thought it was refreshing. So I started working on the board side of it with the investors and just, open to the idea. So if you go back to that 3-year period, we had already started saying, hey, we need to get more. What you were talking about was more than what I had at least suggested to the board. So I thought it was refreshing. So as we got into it, we had one board meeting where I stepped in for a period of time as acting CEO in transition, as we went through a couple of changes. And we had proposed as an executive team something different in terms of looking at Founderpath, and basically got the nod to go ahead and move forward in continuing to talk with you guys. And so I think, and I'll stop there and let Andy take it from there, but we had it, it was a really refreshing approach. And then we were geeking out a little bit, Nathan, about you personally and the work that you've done in your company and how you do it and your podcasts and your knowledge. And, so we were kind of communicating back and forth with everybody. And I think everybody was really eating that up. So Baron, I'll let you speak to it, Andy.
Yeah, no, I think it's right. And I think it was obviously kind of, there were conversations that, Lonnie would have with the board, on one stream of things. And kind of, I was thinking about the kind of broader team as well. But yeah, I think it was the combination of the excitement of kind of working with you and the team at Founderpath, Nathan, and kind of, you have knowledge in the area. There's the work that's going on there. It's like, how can we learn from that and help the team, bring the team along on that journey as well? And so, it did open up the chance to have that opportunity, and I guess an outside perspective coming into it, which maybe we hadn't had before, right? Because the conversations are all happening internally or from within the investors, own, meetings that they're having and things like that. Having an outside perspective coming into that and saying, hey, this is really where it should be, help to kind of facilitate those conversations moving forward and get us into a better spot.
Yeah, it was fresh. So
fresh is a good word. Fresh is a good word. Yeah. So just for you guys listening on the podcast, basically what we effectively said, and I'm sort of paraphrasing and summarizing here, but we basically said, hey, look, we'll fund the business with $1 million or $1.5 million or whatever it is. But at the funding date, we also need to see a board resolution that establishes a new 10, 15, whatever it was, ESOP pool, and a chunk of that ESOP pool immediately be reallocated sort of to management go forward. And we were able to sort of bring all these things together and get it done. Andy, Lonnie, one of the key pieces of the story that we skipped over, but it happens to so many founders and you never read about it in the press because everyone is really shy and they're not sure how to talk about it in a positive way. Anytime you have more than one co-founder and a company's been around for more than 10 years, you're going to have co-founder conflict, right? And it doesn't have to be bad conflict. You're just going to have diverging interests and diverging priorities. And eventually you're going to maybe have one co-founder that leaves the business. So you have a big chunk of equity that we call non-operational, which, maybe they deserve it, maybe they don't. That's besides the point. But you guys have only said really great things about the founding team. There was never anything negative mentioned, just the fact that diverging priorities. Talk a little bit about sort of how the company ended up with so much sort of equity, non-operational, sort of outside the business, and why that happened.
Yeah, I think it was. When me and Dave kind of start off the business, and very early on we had another guy, Tom Williams, who joined us kind of 5-6 months into the business, and so we made him a founder as well, and kind of saw it as a great kind of unit between us in order to kind of drive the business forward. Tom was focused purely on the revenue side, Dave is CEO, and me from a technical and product side. And we always, as I said, like the those initial years and everything, it was a lot, but it was like we had great fun doing it and everything. But it's Dave then moved over to the US because we realized that we've got huge opportunity there, and that gave us a good split of like someone revenue focused in both areas. It was great because at the time, InMoment actually gave us some office space at their office in order to sit ourselves in a spot in the US.
We were trying to keep it close.
Yeah. Smart, Lonnie, smart.
Yeah. But I think, like as time went on, there are different approaches and different thought processes, and everyone's kind of coming at it with a slightly different perspective on things. And it definitely there's tension that can build there between founders. And as I said, it's like it's a long journey to go through and not have those tensions and those things happen. So, and Tom had left the business during COVID. His time, he'd kind of, it was, I said, it's a long journey for anyone to go through, and you've got to be like all in. And Dave got to the same point where he felt like it was his time to move away from the business as well. But together we driven that business forward and done a lot. And so I think it is everything kind of is deserving to those folks. And I was literally texting back and forth with Dave just prior to this call as well. So we went through a tougher period, definitely, and have kind of built things back up. But it's great to now kind of have that external support as well from those that were in the business, and that continues to drive forward. Same with our previous CFO. Be seeing him out in Park City, and kind of extend your network and your reach into other areas as well. So although they're not within the business, like there's always someone else to call on, and it's great to be in that position because it could so easily go a different direction, I think, with when these things happen.
And then I'll just add, Nathan, if I may, a little color to that as well. It followed Andy all the way through that. I remember all those days, Andy, as we were going through it. And I think all the way back to Tom, Tom had felt like he had run his course with what he had contributed to the company.
What was Tom? He was the CFO?
CRO.
CRO. Okay.
CRO, yeah. Yeah, and I think, there's those different stages of the company where, a founder or an executive comes in and says, okay, I've taken it from 0 to 10 or whatever the case may be, and who's going to take it to 10 to 20, and what does that actually mean? And I think that's part of what we saw. And then when Dave decided to step away from the company, it was good for his own health. He had some other ideas and recognized, I think, respectfully, that maybe, there was some different leadership that was needed to move on from there. And then also the CFO at the time, within a 30-day period or so, roughly, it also kind of come to that same conclusion. I think the message of that is that that's why culture is so important. And, working with teams closely is because we work hard and it can wear people down, over time. And both of those individuals, actually all three of those individuals are succeeding and flying and doing different things. And Dave's just started a new company and he's excited about it. And, and everybody communicates and connects. But it was time even for me to step aside and step back into the chairman role, let Andy go. And Andy has just taken things in the last 7 months, to a new level. So it's I feel like a proud dad, but it makes me feel old. And he's done all this by himself, and of course with the team, but he's really doing a remarkable job all the way down into getting, the relationship with you. So.
Well, yeah, and I appreciate you guys talking so openly about this. Lonnie, you sit on a lot of boards. We diligence a lot of companies, and this happens like literally 95% of the time is there's some kind of co-founder conflict like this. And there's a variety of ways to solve it, right? You could pay cash to buy out and this could also be early angels, right? Or, just non-operational equity. You could raise money to then go buy out those and do a secondary. You could reestablish a new ESOP pool with board approval that effectively dilutes the whole business and then gives more incentive to go forward management. Lonnie, have you seen any other effective strategies to incentivize go forward management when there's a big chunk of unoperational equity?
I think we've done some things along the way, even, through kind of a tough 3-year period, if you will, just with the economy and everything kind of shifting to the left and right. So short-term stuff, bonuses and, things like that so it'd be more on a lower level scale, if you will. So if we couldn't get the equity there. And what's interesting too, I one time wanted to give equity to an executive team, another organization that I was there, and everybody was grateful for it. But one guy. And he came to me and said, "Hey, I've got 2 kids in college and I'm trying to get through that. And cash is more important to me now than it will be in the future." And we sat down as a team and, worked with HR to make sure we were above board doing everything correctly. But we did something completely different for him that kept him in the seat all the way until, like 5-6 years later when the company started to transition. So I think sometimes what motivates us is not always what we think. Mm-hmm. And, in Andy's case, clearly he's been there from the beginning. So being able to do what you've done for him, and we were able to approve has been a really big, boost to him. So non-traditional stuff is still very effective, and we've used it from small to big. Yeah.
Let's wrap up, guys, the last 3 minutes here with just sort of the Founderpath experience. So are you guys comfortable sharing what deal we ended up doing together, the amount and maybe, the term or whatever you're comfortable sharing, Andy?
Yeah. So, we ended up doing $750K. So over 24 months, and I think there's, we'd looked at a few different ranges with that, and we'd kind of started off smaller, gone up, kind of sat somewhere in the middle, because we had a very strategic plan for coming into this next year that we want to be able to utilize those funds for, and have kind of earmarked that for some areas that we know we've got some success coming. We've had a lot of companies kind of transitioning from other tools coming to us saying that they want to use us, and from a completely new buyer set. So we were like, all right, this is something we need to go after, because it's not often these things kind of land on your doorstep in this way. And so recognizing that's something we wanted to move quickly on. And again, we've been having the conversations from February, right? But I think there was a lot of back and forth in deciding what we wanted to do. And you were extremely supportive in that period of time. But actually,
we wanted you guys to love your pro forma, and Skylar, your CFO, is very talented. And it was clear you guys were, crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's, which we appreciated.
Yeah, no, but when the decision was made and we moved forward with that, it was extremely, extremely quick, and very supportive on that, and kind of moved fast, and the team have been phenomenal. And I think it's that mix of kind of the supporting team there around it. And I think again, we got a chance to catch up in London, kind of talk product, talk that aspect of it from us, like going to raise from somewhere else, like that was something that is completely unique to Founderpath and to you guys. And that was what made it important for us, because we knew there was a relationship there we could build on, and there'd be more that you'd be able to support us on and things moving forward. So it was like, we were always like, this feels extremely right for us, and kind of, had moved that forward with the board and got to a great position, and excited now moving forward.
We feel the same. Lonnie, take us home here with last thoughts. You've been a part of a lot of companies. I'm sure you've seen all kinds of capital structures outside of equity, debt, factoring, things like Founderpath, et cetera. Can you compare and contrast a little bit? And negatives are okay too, but how did you and the board analyze sort of our process, our deal, compared to any other conversations you were having or what you've seen in the past with banks and other debt providers?
Yeah, and I think that we evaluated that too when we were chatting, with you. And Skylar and I spent a lot of time together, and I know Andy and Skylar, at the hip to hip now, but we looked at other alternatives, and you start to look at things. And I think Andy probably said it early on, you want to work with somebody that actually can bring value to you. So it's not just about the equity and the way it's structured. It's also, we felt like you could be a big part of our team at whatever level, or the Founderpath organization. And then you look at time to money.
Yeah.
We were looking at that, and I mean, we knew we could go get some other money. And then, in fact, I'll tell you, we've had, current investors come back and say, "Hey, wait a minute," and I'll give Andy the kudos here. Wait a minute, we now think we may want to jump back in here and this and that. And Andy held
awesome.
firm. Yeah, Andy held firm on it. We had a meeting, and Andy, it all happened pretty quick. So for us, what we're getting is more than just, the equity. And we discovered that with you and your push to get, the Go Forward team further down that path with additional equity. And we knew we were getting a team, whether it's you or your extended team, and some knowledge, and then support. I've worked with bad boards that, pretty much just slay and beat and drag people through a process on the front end and in the back end, and it's just arduous. And what everybody needs now is lift. And I think that's what you've created for Andy and team, is some lift. So
cool. We're excited about what you're doing. I want to also use this opportunity to promote you guys, because you have launched a new UX tool, which is directly targeted to the audience listening right now, which are software founders that might want to do UX testing. We mentioned some of the bigger players in the space that have since consolidated user testing, user Zoom. They're too expensive. They're bulky. I've tested all of them. And frankly, I think VoxPopMe is ahead of those folks in terms of feature parity on some of these angles. Andy, take us home here real quick. If people want to test your new UX offering, where can they find it? What's the URL? How can they get involved?
Yeah, just jump onto VoxPopMe.com, get in touch through there. We can help you launch it kind of multiple different scales, but make sure that, everyone's putting the customer and the consumer front and center at all of their business decisions, which is something we always talk about so much and often don't do enough of, right? And so we make that a hell of a lot easier for everyone to do. And so, yeah, excited to be working with a bunch more people in that space.
Guys, watch out for VoxPopMe. They're capital efficient, raising just call it 15, 16 million bucks to grow revenues to 10 million. So they've been efficient, obviously working with a lot of different groups of providers. We're excited to have funded them with 750,000 bucks at Founderpath on a 24-month term. But more importantly, we were able to work with the chairman of the board and Lonnie and the Go Forward CEO Andy to reset some of the equity chunks of the business to incentivize the Go Forward team. Andy, back in day one in 2012, owned only 2% of the company. We wanted to get him up to where he needs to be now as the Go Forward CEO, and we weren't able to do that without him and Lonnie's support on the board. The full story was a good one. Enjoy the episode, Lonnie. Andy, thanks for taking us to the top. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Good spending time.